steps of the Guildhall Art Gallery, and we're in the middle of London. Looking now at the Guildhall, what a wonderful building this is. And if we close slightly to the left here and span round, you'll see quite a contrast as we get the brand new addition to this wonderful old building. Well, we're here to talk about sustainable development today, and indeed it does tie up with the vision of the old and the beautiful and the new and the rather stark. As you know, a lot of our wonderful old Victorian houses are being knocked down for no apparent reason, and new housing estates, blocks of flats everywhere being built on greenbelt land, brown land, anywhere you can imagine. And Robert Theobald is with me today, and we want to tell you why this is happening, where it's coming from. It's something called sustainable development, which people in this country know very little about. In America, they know a little more. There's more information getting out, and a very, very learned gentleman called Michael Shaw of www.freedomadvocates.org or .com. You go to his site and you'll see much, much more than we can tell you in the short time that we've got here today. But his information is largely American, and it's American-based. And we're here today to tell you that this is going on in our country also. It involves the Office of Deputy Prime Minister. It involves various governments. And anyway, I'm going to let Robert Theobald let you know exactly what's going on. And I urge you to please listen carefully to this. It's terribly important because it's the whole crux of what is going wrong with our country today. So it's over to Robert Theobald. So, Robert, can you please tell us what is this elusive, very difficult to understand sustainable development about? Where did it come from? Who invented it? And what is it doing to us?
Well, Fern, you've asked me quite a complex question there. It's a thing we hear a lot about, sustainable development. It's coming into the news. We're seeing it even in our local newspapers. Some of us are even seeing departments of the local council dedicated to putting sustainable development into operation. So it's coming into everybody's lives, and it sounds a jolly nice thing, really. It's a reassuring kind of a phrase, but I think it's important to say that it's actually a buzzword, or a buzz phrase rather. We've got to try and see behind it, because there is an agenda behind it, Fern.
So where exactly did sustainable development come from? What are its origins?
Well, I suppose you've got to go back to 1992 here. We can talk about the Rio summit that was concerned with sustainable development, and a document that they produced there was Agenda 21. They can be understood as the same thing, but we'll talk about the sustainable development. That was the thing that Prince Charles was involved in. I understand he was actually talking to Maurice Strong on the Royal Yacht Britannia before that meeting. Maurice Strong was the main. Well, I suppose he was the main man there, really. He has been the advisor to the Secretary General of the UN. That was Kofi Annan. It's a new one now. It's Ban Ki-moon now. I'm not sure if he's the advisor of Ban Ki-moon, but because he's quite an old man now. He's about 80, I think, or something like that. But this is a man of enormous influence. He came from a very, very poor family in Canada, and he made his way to New York. And when he was a very young man, I believe as a teenager, he had a job as a doorman at the United Nations building. And he was noticed in that job, and he had rather rapid promotion from that job. And as I understand it, he was noticed by David Rockefeller, and he became prominent in quite a short time. He's a billionaire. He's involved in petroleum. He's got an enormous list of companies that he's involved with in the who's who. He's in the establishment. Well, he's very, very well into the establishment because he's a Canadian Privy Councillor. So he's obviously extremely well respected from that point of view. And this man, obviously he's a close associate of David Rockefeller. He did have a ranch in Colorado called the Backer, a huge ranch. I don't know how many thousands of acres, but an absolutely enormous one. And on that ranch, he put sustainable, in inverted commas, principles into operation. He had it set up like more or less for the worship of Gaia, can we say, which is the nature goddess, the pre-Christian nature goddess. He had Native American shamans on there. He had Shirley MacLaine. He had Buddhists on there, and this is a man who obviously takes the idea of sustainable development beyond mere mechanics. He obviously believes it on almost a religious level.
So, in other words, sustainable development is not just about pure ecology and recycling properly and taking down buildings we don't think work. It's much more than that, is it?
Yes, I think it's much more than that. It's a thing which is going to affect everyone's life to the most minute degree, because it's a total prescription for how life is to be lived, and it's being manoeuvred. The people that are promoting it, which obviously we talk about Maurice Strong as one of the main people that was involved in it, but the people that are promoting it, they've got three ways really that they're doing it. You've got it mentioned here in Michael Shaw's book, which is Understanding Sustainable Development, Agenda 21. Now Michael Shaw tells you about the three E's of sustainable development, which are equity, using the law to restructure human nature, the economy, the international redistribution of wealth, and the creation of public-private partnerships. Now that's a very, very important one to think about, Fern, the public-private partnerships, because that's a big part of it. And then the environment, that's the last E, nature above man. That's the three E's. Now it's going to be put into operation via, well, in the first instance by soft law. So in other words, they bring out these recommendations in the United Nations, and then they would go as recommendations to the various countries that are members of the United Nations system, and they would put those things in as recommendations, and gradually over some years they find their way into the law of the land. So that's the way they do it. It's a gradualist thing, which is the old Fabian way, the Fabian Society way, gradualism. You see.
And talking about Fabians, they do very much run the new Labour government. Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, for a start, are very big Fabians. But I just now want to read you this letter which Robert wrote to the Daily Telegraph. and it might just explain a little bit and give us a starting point of telling you just what they are trying to foist on us. The Global Biodiversity Assessment is a summary of the report which was published by the United Nations Environmental Programme. It is an analysis of the concepts discussed and accepted at Maurice Strong's Earth Summit, held in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. Strong also co-authored the Earth Charter in March 1997 with Mikhail Gorbachev. The assessment covers human activities that are considered unsustainable, among which are, and I remind you that anything considered unsustainable has got to go and is being, as we speak, phased out of our lives now. Grazing of livestock, cows, sheep, goats and horses. Disturbance of the soil surface. Large hoofed animals causing compaction of the soil, reducing filtration. Fencing of pastures and paddocks. Agriculture, modern farm production systems. Chemical fertilizers, herbicides. Farmlands and rangelands, pastures, fish ponds, plantations, harvesting of timber, logging activities. Now, a lot of these things I know you'll say, well, what's wrong with that? This is a fantastic good thing to do. Well, this is just the top layer of what's going on. We want to take you beneath those layers and tell you what they really mean by these items. And there are other things involved also, not on this list, which I'll leave Robert to tell you about in a little while. It's, as Robert was saying, this is gradually being foisted on us by soft law. And Robert, can you tell us why it's been so easy to do this?
Why has it been so easy to do? Well, it's an interesting question, isn't it? I suppose that most people get on with their lives and with their responsibilities and looking after their families and going to work and so forth. The vast majority of people, they don't have the time to study these kind of things. Also, you're not exactly helped by the newspapers because you won't see this kind of thing in detail in the newspapers. You have to dig to find it. That's why we're grateful for things like freedom advocates in America who've explained sustainable development very, very well. I've got a little booklet. We'll tell you about it later. You have to dig to get the information. You can't just get it from the newspapers and television, and that's why people don't know much about it. And it could be construed as being a very dry subject, but how can it be a dry subject for them when it's going to totally affect everyone's lives in the rich countries, in the poor countries? It's going to turn everything upside down, and we got to ask the question: to whose advantage? To whose advantage is this? Who is really going to get the advantage from it? That's the question we have to ask.
So, going back to the points again here, the grazing of livestock, cows, sheep, goats and horses. We have noticed, obviously, a discouragement in cattle farming in this country. We've got a lot of pig farmers going out of business. We've got the fencing of pastures and paddocks has got to go, remember? They just don't want us doing any farming, doing agriculture here, to be true. I think everybody out there has noticed what's going on. Our poor farmers are being really encouraged not to farm. But, I mean, what is actually behind? This does look so bland and so good, very cosy, nice and sustainable. And this is the problem that we've been having, is getting this news out to people of what's behind what's going on here. Remember, this has been foisted on us since 1992 and we haven't noticed it. I argue that global warming is being used as a tool to implement this sustainable development syllabus. And I urge you to have a look at Reverend Philip Foster's very good little video about this on Google Video. We'll give you some addresses for this anyway on the screen. So, Robert, can you tell us what's behind some of these points, please? Oh, and I do believe there's something about no single-family dwellings, no private property, And there are no fish ponds is rather strange.
Well, I imagine lots of people in the world actually do depend on fish ponds for their protein. So that would be a severe blow to many communities. I'm thinking actually of communities in the Far East, people like Vietnam and Cambodia and China and places like that. What's behind it? Well, I think what's behind it, they basically want to destroy, let's say the small and the middle-sized farmer. Mm-hmm. And so what's behind it? Well, money's behind it. Money for a certain few people. This agenda here of attacking agriculture, they're against modern agriculture, modern farm production systems. So they want to go back to the old-fashioned systems. Some of the old-fashioned systems are okay. They deliver the goods. They don't cost too much in fertilizer and so forth like that. But they want to go back. They want to take a retrograde step. They're not going to be producing so much food. It's a Malthusian process. Thomas Malthus was actually a clergyman in the early 19th century. Mm-hmm. That he was in the employ of the British East India Company, and his theory was that the world was overpopulated. Mm-hmm. It couldn't produce enough food for the population. Therefore, the population had to be culled. That was his theory. You find an echo of this coming through in the World Wildlife Fund with Prince Philip, that was founded by Prince Philip and Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, mm-hmm. who got married to Queen Juliana, wasn't it? He left the Nazi Party to marry Queen Juliana. He sent his letter of resignation into Hitler and signed it Heil Hitler. That was Prince Bernhard, mm-hmm. who started the World Wildlife Fund with Prince Philip. They've set up enormous wildlife wildlife parks and reserves and all this. These are some of the people that are behind it. Obviously, with our own Prince Charles is also behind it. But obviously you can't propel things like this, Fern, unless there's money to be made in it by somebody. Mm-hmm. These things don't just things like this don't happen by themselves willy-nilly. There's somebody going to make a lot of money out of it, and that's what's driving it forward, Fern.
A little bit like the global warming, where they're going to make heaps of money from carbon CO2 rationing, I almost said. Yeah, as Robert says, nothing happens for no reason in this world today. And don't forget, this isn't just our country here, this is worldwide. This is going on. Looking through the list again, we've got, you see, chemical fertilizers have to go, which is interesting, and herbicides have to go. Farmlands, rangelands have to go. Plantations, harvesting of timber, logging activities have to go. And you have to say to yourself, well, what's going to replace these? But what is also hidden deep in here is that they require is it 1 billion population?
I think so, yeah.
Yes.
I think they're planning to bring the population down very low.
And that is on the syllabus, as they declared it in 1992, world population down to 1 billion. So you see, you won't need this extensive work going on. Now, in America, it's very, very obvious that they're actually reclaiming all the wildlands. They're reclaiming them for themselves. Not for us, the people, but for themselves. And they're going to be using those wildlands for extracting minerals and other nice goodies that'll bring them some good money. And the people will be in human reserves is what their words, human reserves, stacked up in multi-storey flats, whatever. It's all there. Read the report. It's all there. So, you see, this is all wrapped up in such a difficult way to explain to people and to get through to people. It's so fuzzy-wuzzy, isn't it, and cosy, and this is nice for the environment, and we should all be behaving like this, you know, and we should always look after the earth. Well, of course we should. But the point is, these people aren't here to look after the earth. They're here to, well, tell us what to do. Yeah?
Yeah, they're here to. It's a communist agenda, actually, because this sustainable development fund. You find it in the Constitution of the Soviet Union. They had it way back. It's quite interesting, actually, because I think there's a quotation from a man called Karl Blois, and he's an American man, and I think he was the Moscow correspondent for the newspaper, the communist newspaper in the United States, and he's quoted as saying, I think he was in conversation with Gorbachev, but he's quoted as saying that the environmental agenda will bring far more people into the communist orbit than the peace agenda ever did. So it's about sustainable development is a part of classic communism, if you like, which is obviously total control of everything that everyone does, the way you live, the way you bring up your family, the way that you do business or don't do business, the way you farm, absolutely everything. So that's what it's about.
So who exactly is implementing this in our country here? I know this is going on in other countries, but how does this affect England, Scotland, Wales, actually, you know, for the man in the street?
Okay. Well, for a start, Fern, we know that maybe about 80% of our laws in this country are now just coming directly from Brussels and rubber stamped by our Parliament. We know that. It's got to be said that, made very clear that the European Union, Brussels, is totally committed to the Sustainable Development Agenda. And what is that agenda? Well, that agenda is world government. And when you get world government, you have certain things that you have to accept. You have to accept free movement of goods, free movement of people, free movement of intellectual property, free movement of money, obviously. In England, in Britain, we know all about the free movement of people, because we've had plenty of people come to live here, especially since the Labour government has been in power. We're told that the reason why we need all these new properties all over the place is because people are living longer, and we've got more one-parent families, which obviously is partly true. But Labour are not responsible for the first, but they're certainly partly responsible for the second. But we know that a vast amount of the influx into the country is because of immigration. So these people have got to be housed. Now, up in the Midlands and the north of England, there's a thing called the Pathfinder Project, which basically is sustainable development, smart growth. Now, you see, to backtrack a bit, in sustainable development, you've got urban smart growth, which deals with the urban environment, and then you've got the Wildlands Project, which deals with the wilderness, which obviously is a thing that applies a lot to America. Here we don't have much wilderness, so we're talking for Britain. We're talking about the smart growth, and if you go to the north of England, they've been knocking down perfectly serviceable, and then it will then be taken over by a builder, a big builder, and it will very likely be a partnership, a public-private partnership. It's always the partnership, you see, because this is a part of it. Partnership, the partnership between government, local government, and business. And this is where you get onto very, very dodgy grounds, because it smacks of fascism when you get this cosy relationship between government, local government, and business. Builders love to build, and obviously they love to build on nice, clear sites which aren't too complicated and messy. Mm-hmm. And if you're a big builder, you don't like fiddling about doing little jobs. You like to do a big job. So what they've done, they've knocked down large parts of the cities in places like Bury and in Lancashire, and perfectly serviceable stone-built houses on the most spurious grounds. And they will say they've got to be replaced by sustainable dwellings. Now, those houses could very, very well be renovated for about £20,000 and brought up to a good standard. They'd be very nice dwellings. They'd be quite charming, actually, in many cases. Admittedly, there's some of them that are past it. Some of them have been so neglected for so long that they've had it. They're not worth saving. But that doesn't apply to the majority of them. Most of them can be brought up to good scratch. But you see, the public-private partnership is going to have a good bite of the cherry. Instead of little jobbing builders getting the jobs, yes. They won't get the jobs. You see, for a start, you see, the renovation of the old properties isn't even favoured, because VAT has to be paid on the renovation of an old building. But that's a side issue at the moment. But so this smart growth business, they're moulding, they're trying to mould all the cities and towns along this smart growth thing. Go to any town and you will see, I'm sure that from your town where you come from, everywhere you go you see these four-storey flats, oh, yeah, all over the place. In my town, it's full of them, and everywhere you go, that's the urban smart growth of the United Nations Agenda 21. Now, the thing, what you've got to be careful of, Fern, is here, there is nothing wrong whatsoever in building a well-insulated, efficient building. It's very, very good sense, and it saves people money, and it's sensible. And there's nothing wrong in that at all. I think that's very, very laudable. But what we've got to remember is that we're talking about total control being exercised, or the attempt to totally control people. Not done immediately straight away. Mm-hmm. It's been done in increments, the way they always do it. This is where we in England, we're always saying, aren't we? Look, we're getting the feeling that Big Brother is looking down our necks the whole time now. Mm-hmm. What was it? One of the most surveilled countries in the world now. Yes. Especially, we've probably been filmed about 50 times since we came into the City of London. I just can see cameras all over the place here. Look. Maybe listen to as well. Yeah, maybe even listen to it. I can see lots of them here. Yeah. It's about sustainable development. Is about total control, and it's a Malthusian agenda. You can't. It's not easy to grasp in a short while. You have to work at it to grasp it. It's deliberately meant to be obscure, because if it was clear, if it was set out in a clear way, people would realise that it's an offensive thing which is militating against mankind. Right. People would realise that. But so it has to be done in an obscure way.
A lot of the more liberal thinking people there, well, they're the ones with the big hearts. They're the ones that care desperately about the conditions in the world. They care desperately about the conditions of the earth and the planet. And to me, a lot of them are just being duped by this. As we said, it's very hard to understand what's going on beneath the surface in this sustainable development. And if you just look at the top surface, well, I think everybody in the land will say, great, lovely, bring it on. And that's why we're trying to tell you today to look beneath the surface, scratch a little bit deeper. By the way, going back to the buildings again, I do believe, wasn't Prescott had something to do with smart growth? And I don't make any allegations whatsoever here, but I did read in the Daily Mail that Prescott's son is a property developer. Just a little aside there, I make no allegations. It was in the Daily Mail. But is that right? This is coming through the same office as regionalisation and some of the other EU diktats.
If it's talking about regionalisation, it's what is very fascinating is that I came to this building in 3 years ago. In 2005, I came to this very building here, and there was a meeting, and it was called Regions to be Cheerful. Mm-hmm. Yes, Michael Snyder. He's the I can't remember what his official title is, but he's a kind of a master of ceremonies for the City of London. He's I suppose he's sort of a front man, really. Anyway, he introduced the meeting, and he said how the City of London was looking after its 12,000 acres in a very sustainable way, which I don't really find terribly surprising, because it's not exactly difficult to look after 12,000 acres of wood. No, I'm talking about the city's country estates, which is Hampstead Heath and Burnham Beeches and lots of others, and Epping Forest. That's all looked after by the city. Now, it's not very hard it's not very difficult to look after those beautiful areas in a sustainable way, because they're wild areas anyway. So I wouldn't say that's particularly clever, although I do salute the city for looking after them. They're looking after them well. But obviously they've got plenty of money to do so, but that's a side issue. But anyway, he introduced the city as being very in favour of Jonathan Porritt's programme, which is obviously pushing sustainable development through the regions. Now, the regionalisation is a European Union device to break up the nation states. In our case, the 12 regions of the United Kingdom. I won't go through them, but London is one, and south east of England is another, and east of England, Scotland is a region, Wales is, Northern Ireland. Anyway, it's a European Union device to break up the nation states, and all the EU countries are effectively regionalised. So Porritt and his organisation are pushing sustainable development through the regions. Now, I'm just trying to remember who was actually on the podium. There was Bevan, who's the chief executive of South East of England Regional Assembly, there was Bevan. There was the man, I think his name was Micklethwaite or Micklewright. Mm-hmm. He was from the World Wildlife Fund. So there we get a link back to Prince Philip, you see. Yes. You see, we get that link back there. This is that Malthusian link, you see. Mm-hmm. We got that. We got, there was a woman there, Dr. Anne-Marie Bruder, well, that's spelt Brouder, if I remember rightly. And what she said, a very, very interesting thing. She said the regions would have to accept environmental refugees. Now that was an interesting thing that made me think. So these different regions will have to. So then you would think to yourself, now, where are all these environmental refugees going to come from? And so, in other words, their environment, where they come from, presumably in third world countries mainly, is going to be severe. They envisage that there's going to be severe damage to different people, to different people's environments, and regions such as regions in places like Britain are going to have to accept environmental immigrants or refugees, if you like. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, you know, a lot of the art in putting together the pieces of jigsaw in this film, connecting the dots, if you like, is just to keep your mind open to stuff. And hearing that environmental refugees, the first thing I thought of was the refugees that we have moving out of our villages into the towns. Because remember what we said, they want to reclaim our wilderness areas. I know we haven't got many here, not like America, but who can argue with me that they're not trying to make the countryside unlivable in? They're taking away all the life-giving services out of those villages. And they're making it impossible for the ordinary person to live there except the rich. People that can afford the car, that can afford to commute. The pensioner who can't get the pension, the young mums who can't get to the post office anymore. It just defies thought, you know, that connecting the dots, yes, these will be environmental refugees, and there's going to be more of them as they keep closing down more and more of our services. And if you start looking for these little links as we go along, get into this subject and look, and you'll find them there, and you'll see that what we're saying is being implemented now as we speak. Even the post office closures are part of this, aren't they?
Yeah. The privatisation of the national post offices, that's a bit of a different thing, because but it's part of the breaking up of the nation states. If you can break up the British post office and the Spanish post office and all this, those post offices are one of the things that holds a nation together. And obviously, yes, the people who's going to suffer by all this? Well, the people in the rural areas. Those people are going to get a very, very second-class, if any, service at all. But let's go back to in sustainable development. It's got to be something which is going to produce a lot of money for somebody. This is what's driving it. It's a return to feudalism. All this, at the present moment in time, we got this thing where we got a terrible thing now of food shortages in the world. There's been food riots in Mexico, Haiti, I think Indonesia, lots of countries. There's been food riots. Russia is only growing a fraction of the food that it could grow. The world could grow enough food for the population. We're told that the population has got to be reduced because there's too many people, we can't feed them. It's not true. These people that are pushing the sustainable development, they are Malthusians. They reject technology. In lots of ways, they reject human progress and scientific progress. And why would they reject it? Why would they do that? Well, it's the same old thing. They agree. It comes back to a basic human thing. They are greedy. They want to maintain their share of the world's wealth. If you can restrict food, if you can restrict the amount of food, so it's at a premium, you can then start to speculate with it. You can then start to make a lot of money. If you can restrict, maybe if oil is restricted by its own natural supply, or somebody is restricting the supply, then it becomes more a premium. More money could be made out of it. This carbon footprint. It's a brilliant thing from the point of view of money making. Absolutely brilliant, because they've basically invented a brand new product. They've invented carbon licenses, a license to produce carbon, and the people behind it. Recently, they were saying, "Oh, the European Union has allowed too many licenses," because they don't want too many licenses. Because when something is freely available and it's available to everybody, you can't make a lot of money out of it. It's only when it starts being a little bit a little bit less available, or less available, that you can make that you can speculate and make money on it. That's what it's all about. It's about what they've done. They've identified a problem. All right, there's a problem. There have been problems with pollution and damage to the environment. They've identified some of the problems, and then they've thought, well, we've got a jolly good way of solving them according to our formula, and at the same time as we solve them according to our formula, we can make a lot of cash as well.
Yeah, you're right there. I can see a lot of in the name of sustainability and environmentalism, it even goes down to our dustbins, doesn't it? The recycling, the control that's going on there.
Well, the recycling is recycling. Obviously, that comes from that's an EU. That's the thing that's ordered by the EU. Actually, as I understand it, lots of that recycling gets the plastic material is shipped off to China. So I haven't quite figured out how that works out to be very, very environmental or sustainable. But apparently, it's meant to be.
It's very profit-making for somebody. A few points there just struck me. Okay, we're running out of food in the world. Well, we're actually paying farmers here not to grow anything. Throughout Europe, we're paying farmers not to grow anything. At one time, this country was sustainable on its own, and now it is not. So, plenty of empty fields, start growing the crops. I can't see the problem.
No, it's got
plenty there, yeah.
Well, Britain has been up to nearly 100% self-sufficient, Fern, especially during the war when everybody was digging up every little patch that they could find and planting vegetables. But even in fairly recent years, I think we've been up around about 80% self-sufficient, which is amazing for a country our size. But now we've dropped right back down to about 60%. But you see, the people in the elite in our country don't think that matters, because they think that that it's more important to be on the global free trade World Trade Organization bandwagon than it is to look after our own farmers. They think our farmers are chicken feed. They think that's a bad choice of simile, really, I suppose. But they don't give any. They're not farming in this country is not counted to be important, and also our fishing has been given. Personally, I think that all countries should be allowed to organise their own agriculture to their own advantage, especially the countries in the third world whose agriculture is being ruined, and their small farmers and their medium-sized farmers are being driven off the land. The same as here, but there it's life and death for them. So we got to, this issue of food security is partly mixed up with what we're talking about, because one of the things that is stated is we've got to have a low carbon footprint, and one of the ways we do that is to burn biofuel. But it's an inhuman, it's an evil agenda, which is that they would rather feed cars than they would people. And who's going to suffer? The people in the third world, the poor countries. They are going to suffer. They're going to starve. This biofuel agenda is evil.
Now, we have said before, this is a worldwide agenda, and New Zealand is affected also. We've got a really good book here, Communist Councils of New Zealand. Now, most of this is available on the internet, but Robert's just highlighted a few little parts of this he wants to read out to you, and I hope that clarifies sustainable development a little more for you. I know it's difficult, it's hard to get your head around it, but it's meant to be difficult. They don't want us to understand it, and for that very reason, I'm determined that I'm going to at least.
Thanks, Fern. John Christian in Communist Councils in New Zealand actually has a chapter on sustainable development. He calls it communist sustainable development. And this is quite a remarkable booklet, actually. I gave it to a member of the House of Lords, a Eurosceptic member of the House of Lords, and he phoned me up and he said to me, yes, he said, I was aware of the things in that booklet. So this booklet is extremely well sourced. Colonel Barry Turner did some notes. They're called Notes in Amplification of Communist Councils in New Zealand, and he gives a bibliography as well. That's at the end of my copy. You won't necessarily get that from the internet. But we could actually remedy that. We could make sure that Colonel Turner's notes are available. I think if you go onto the Australian League of Rights website, it's got a very good website and archive. Excuse me. I think you'll see that Colonel Turner's Notes in Amplification of Communist Councils in New Zealand. Don't think that because we're talking about New Zealand it doesn't apply to us or to America or to Australia, because in these matters New Zealand has been chosen many times as a kind of a guinea pig to put various things into operation that the world elite wants to try out. So don't be fooled by the allusion to New Zealand. So I'll read one or two things out from John Christian's chapter on sustainable development. In 1992, we've already mentioned this, the Communist United Nations Conference on the Environment and Development, that's UNCED, in Rio, Brazil, was co-chaired by former Soviet Union President Mikhail Gorbachev and N.M. Rothschild London agent, Canadian billionaire Maurice Strong. Christian carries on to say, the UN's communist secret agenda through environmentalism and sustainable development is very cunning and has deceived a lot of well-meaning people. Most people genuinely want to protect the environment and ensure the Earth's resources are sustainable for future generations. There's no doubt about that. But the communist goal of sustainable development and environmentalism has absolutely nothing underlined to do with protecting the environment and sustainability. It is all about the abolition of property rights and ultimately collectivization of housing and farms under corporate state control. I'm just picking pieces out here just to highlight them. The United Nations Policy of Sustainable Development, introduced in 1992 at the UNCED Rio de Janeiro and implemented through Habitat 2 and the UN World Commission on Environment and Development, is taken directly from the USSR Constitution, Chapter 2, Article 18, which reads, "In the interests of the present and future generations, the necessary steps are taken in the USSR to protect and make scientific rational use of the land and its mineral and water resources, and the plant and animal kingdoms to preserve the purity of air and water, ensure reproduction of natural wealth, and improve the human environment." Well, as a side comment, I'm sure that I don't think they did very well at it, actually. Anyway, John Christian didn't write that. A very, very interesting event happened in 1987. This is a meeting of the Fourth World Wilderness Congress up at Denver, Colorado, which established the World Conservation Bank. The Congress was set up by none other than London's late Baron Edmond de Rothschild, chairman of Banque Privée Edmond de Rothschild, Geneva, Switzerland. And he's one of the trustees of the International Wilderness Foundation that sponsored the conference. Approximately 1,500 of the world's most powerful bankers and leaders attended the Congress, which was chaired by Rothschild agent and Canadian multi-billionaire Maurice Strong. So you've got Maurice Strong there again, you see. One speech Oh, this is one speech was made by David Lang, a leading US financier and close personal friend and business partner of Strong, who said, "When the auditor finally gets his hands into the balance sheet, I suggest therefore that this be sold not through a democratic process. That would take too long and devour far too much of the funds to educate the cannon fodder, unfortunately, which populates the earth. We have to take an almost elitist programme that we can see beyond our swollen bellies and look to the future in time frames and in results, which are not easily understood or which can be, with intellectual honesty, be reduced down to some sort of simplistic definition." So there you are. They don't want you to understand what they're doing. He tells you there. Talking about smart growth, we already mentioned that, which is the smart growth is the urban aspect of sustainable development. The 1995 session of the UN General Assembly passed a number of rules 61, 62 and 63, and gave local governments, civil organisations and private citizens the right to participate directly in the development and implementation of these documents. It was directed by the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the UN and the Prince of Wales International Business Leaders Forum. The philosophy of sustainable development basically says that there are too many people on planet Earth and there are not enough resources to go round. What we need to do is urgently reduce the population, preserve, conserve and ration, in inverted commas, the remaining resources, and that the UN is the only body that can do it. The World Bank already has a huge statistical database on countries and individuals, what they produce and what resources they consume: water, energy, food, raw materials, heat, waste, health, social services, etc. If the net figure is a plus, they are considered to be good, productive world citizens. If it is a negative, they are in line for liquidation. These are all basically the same old socialist, communist ideas. And yeah, we're talking here about a Marxist-Leninist philosophy. John Christian lays it out in his document. The planned economy that permeated the old Soviet Union. In '92 at Rio, the Soviet-style strategy proposed by Agenda 21, Programme of Action from the UN Conference on the Environment and Development, was smart growth. We talked about that. That's the Pathfinder. The Pathfinder in the North and Midlands of England is part of that. This agenda can be found in a UN companion book called Global Biodiversity Assessment, produced by Cambridge University Press. It proposes to model all the cities of the world on the Israel-Moses Sif political and economic planning plan. That was a Fabian plan before the Second War, and the planned economic system of development used by Lenin and Stalin under the old communist Soviet system of local government. The UN Smart Growth legislation in the United States was first passed in the state of Maryland in March 1997. Since then it's been gradually introduced in city and district councils all over the world, including New Zealand. Of course, rarely if ever you will hear of the policy coming from the foul brood of UN international bankers. While virtually all of the general public are oblivious of this fact, usually individual councils will be happy to credit themselves as authors of the plans. I just would like to mention how they put this, how they convince people at the local level of the need for sustainable development. Now, I came here with a friend, I told you, 3 years ago, and we came into this building, and I think we must have been in one of these rooms above here. I think I can say that it was one of the most stunning rooms I've ever been in. I'm very affected by building, by architecture and rooms and so forth. Yeah. That was a powerful room, and it had a marvellous, a powerful, I wouldn't say it was beautiful, but it was very powerful, a very powerful stained glass window. And in there we went into Jonathan Porritt's meeting, then we were broken up into groups. And we went into this room, and I forget what group we were discussing a particular aspect. and we had a facilitator. And what happened in there, what it actually was, it was the Delphi process, dialogue to consensus. And this is officially pushed by the United Nations for putting their agenda into process, for convincing people at the local level to get on board their agenda. And it happened up there. Now, we had the facilitator in the room. There was about a dozen of us, and we all sat around the facilitator. Yes. And she was asking us about various aspects of the sustainable development through the regions and all this. My friend and I, obviously, we had reservations, and we stated them. We had reservations. When our facilitator came down into the full session, after we'd been through our little committee up in one of these rooms here, I didn't recognise what had been said from her report. When she delivered her report to Jonathan Porritt and the podium of dignitaries, what she said, it didn't seem to be what had happened, what had been said at all in the meeting. I think that they'd already figured it all out and what they were going to say. Yeah. So this is what they call the Delphi system. If you go onto the internet, anyone that would like to check it up, you just tap in Delphi, which is a Fabian corporation, developed that many years ago. It's a very, very clever thing. They use it in all levels of local government, companies. What some people call it a pre-wired meeting. So if you ever go into a meeting of anything and you come out at the end of it and you think to yourself, now what happened in that meeting? We didn't get anything we wanted at all. You can very often know that's a meeting. Sometimes they're called workshops, meetings, under the Delphi system. So you check that out. One of the men that studied it a lot is a man in America called Dean Gotcher. That's Gotcher. So if you go onto Dean Gotcher's website, or tap him into the search engine, you will get a good explanation of how they work it. It's a clever thing. But you'd be amazed how people fall for it. Yeah.
I've got a little plug here too. Now, we've managed to get one of the books from Michael Shaw of Freedom Advocates, and he's written a book on how to counteract group manipulation tactics, which in fact is the Delphi technique. Now, it's available. The price ticket on mine was $20. It probably still is $20. And I'm sure he would be pleased to send you one wherever you are in the world. It's a brilliant little book, and it's a home workshop. You can get friends together, other people in your council together, any group that you feel is being threatened by this technique being used against you. It's a mass manipulation, believe me. And this book will help you to counteract it and win. That's what we need to do. Okay, it's my little plug over.
Different books that and things that I've referred to, and my knowledge is I've still got lots of things to learn. But some of the books that I've relied on, I've got Dr. Stan Monteith's Sustainable Development Syllabus, which is from Radio Liberty in California. If you put in www.radioliberty.com, you will see all the books and publications that Dr. Stan Monteith of Radio Liberty has got, and he's got an extremely good sustainable development syllabus. He'll explain to you the background of it. He'll explain to you the world government aspect, going right back to Cecil Rhodes, and even back to John Ruskin before him. He also wrote a book called The Brotherhood of Darkness, which is extremely informative. Not very long, but it's got lots of information in it. I think Fern's probably got one, haven't you? The other things that I've would recommend. I would recommend Lyndon LaRouche.
So we'll show you these up on the screen so you can get an idea of who to get in touch with. So we've got sustainable development, which isn't what it seems to be. Look beneath the layers. We've got the little hidden things in there. Oh, they don't want ski runs, do they?
No.
They don't want ski runs. They don't want cemeteries. Anything that's a waste of space. Cemeteries being one of them. They don't want single-family dwellings. Now, we're finding that Italy or Spain, I think it was Spain, where elderly people are being visited by men with clipboards and having students foisted on them because they have 3 bedrooms, they only need 1. Now, just think about this for a minute. If we get into this system whereby our living space is rationed, everybody out there who's a single person will have a studio flat. A couple will have 1 bedroom. You have 1 baby, you have 2 bedrooms. If another baby of the same sex, you still have 2 bedrooms until those children have gone and married and gone away. I know this because this is what they have been doing in Russia. And we have another problem with the housing, which is that they don't want private property. Have you noticed how many people are losing their homes lately? Have you noticed? Put 2 and 2 together. Anyway, just to sum up, Robert, what is the sort of end result then of what the whole of the sustainable development syllabus, where is it aiming to get us?
Well, Fern, at the end of this book here, Understanding Sustainable Development, which is written by Michael Shaw of Freedom Advocates, he gives you a little paragraph at the end. A typical day in the Orwellian society created by smart growth. That's smart growth is an aspect of sustainable development. So a typical day in the Orwellian society created by smart growth would consist of an individual waking up in his government-provided housing unit, eating a ration of government-subsidised foods purchased at a government-sanctioned grocery store, walking his children, if he has any, to the government-run childcare centre, boarding government-subsidised public transport to go to his government job, then returning home later that evening. That actually reminds me of a quotation from George Bernard Shaw, and I can't remember it verbatim, but he said something like this. I've got it somewhere at home. He said, in the socialist state, you will be well housed, well fed, well clothed. You will have a job. So everything will be laid on for you. But if, however, you do not prove worthy of all these benefits that you're to receive, you may be executed in a kindly manner.
There you have it. Now, I do implore you, look into this yourself. We always say, don't believe us. You don't have to believe anything we've said. But what you must do is go and investigate it for yourself. And I think you'll find that what we've said holds water. What we've said is backed up by so many documents, so many people. But I know it's a difficult subject to get your head round. But we must do this. We must get our heads around this and understand what's happening to us. This is in your homes now. Right now, this minute, this stuff is being implemented. It's being forced upon us. We don't want it. We didn't ask for it. Nobody's voted for it. And they've got no business in enforcing rules and regulations that we don't need.
Thank you very much, Fern. And I'm glad to have the opportunity to talk about these things. Just got to stress again that it's a very complex subject. It does require a little bit of perseverance to understand it. But the more people that try and understand it and try and react against it, the better. Because this is not for the good of humanity. It's not even for the good of nature, as far as in my opinion. It's got to be understood and opposed.
Thank you very much.